Energy and relationships, two very important things. What do they have to do with the supply chain? What do they have to do with us? Well, I believe if we have the right energy and we know how to cultivate and influence the right relationships, we get through life way better. And I believe that's true at work and at home. Today, on Supply Chain Today, we have the Wall Street Journal bestselling author, Jon Gordon, of books like The Energy Bus and The Carpenter and many others, as well as a new book, The Relationship Grid, coming out that's going to talk to us about energy and relationships. It's really important that we get our arms around these things, and I know you're going to enjoy this talk, and you're going to enjoy Jon. So get ready for Supply Chain Today with Ralph Henderson. Well, welcome, Jon Gordon. I am so excited to have you here, and I know the people who are going to be viewing this will be as well. We are talking today about energy. We're talking about relationships. I can tell you firsthand, knowing Jon Gordon, he is a husband, he's a father, he's a speaker, he's an author, and I can't speak for the first two, but I can speak for the second two. He does those very well. I'll let him talk about the first two. But today we're talking about energy and we're talking about relationships and the supply chain right now with everything we have going on. It's so important for us to focus on these two things. So first of all, thank you for being here, Jon. I really appreciate it. And are you ready to dig into energy and relationships?
Thanks, Ralph. I definitely am. And by the way, I asked my wife the other day on a scale of 1 to 10, how much you'd like to be married to me. And she said pre-COVID or now. So I'm not sure where I am with the relationship piece right now.
That is fantastic. So the first time we met a few years ago, actually about 5 years ago, you spoke to this industry at an executive summit and you talked about a book, The Energy Bus. A lot of the viewers have seen that and read that, but some of them probably haven't. I don't want you to have to go through a whole synopsis, but maybe just a cursory, The Energy Bus, what is it? And, maybe give them some insight.
Well, it's a fable. It's a story about a guy who's miserable and negative. His team at work is in disarray. He has a problem at home and he wakes up Monday morning to a flat tire. So he's fed up with life and he has an important meeting to get to. So he asks his wife to take him to work and she won't. That was based on personal experience. So he has to take a bus to work. Gets on the bus, meets Joy, the bus driver. Uber wasn't around back then when I wrote the book. And he has to basically learn these lessons along the way to get his team on the bus and moving in the right direction with a shared vision, focus, and purpose. And it's about the fact that every one of us will have to overcome negativity, adversity, and challenges to ultimately define ourselves and our team's success. So you have to be more positive than the negativity that you face. It's about your positive energy being greater than all of the negativity and the doubt and the fear. And right now, as you know, we're dealing with a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty. We're going through a challenging time. So now more than ever, we need to stay positive. We need to have that positive energy. And as you said, continue to develop great relationships. That's what will get us through this time. And I think that's why the Energy Bus, even years later, is resonating with people right now because of what we're going through.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. Two things I have to tell the folks watching this. Number one, your book is based on personal experience. So you're not sitting up on a pedestal saying, I got this. What you're saying is, look, I've been there. And so I want to help you. And you're applying what you've learned. And the second thing I want to say is the application of it. In the supply chain and logistics space, we love application. And one of the things I really like about your books and how you write is you write in parables, which is, first of all, so easy to understand and read. And number two, it's got such great life lessons that we can actually apply. Quickly, why do you write in parables and how did you come up with that?
Well, the best way we learn is through a principle, a story, and an application. So when you write or speak, you actually want to share a principle, a story, and an application. You just said the logistics world is big on applications. So how can we apply this? How can we take this lesson and put it into our life? So if the story is simple and powerful and compelling, you read it, but then you say, okay, how can I implement this in my life? So often we read things and they're very complicated, very cluttered, and it's hard to take action. So for me, I love to just share really powerful, simple principles that allow people to take action to create the results that they want. And when you take action, simple actions, you see that it's actually not very complicated. It's not rocket science. It
Mm.
really is about the little things that make a big difference. So when I speak, people say, well, you didn't say anything new. Well, there is nothing new because it's about taking what is timeless, what works, and actually doing it. So for me, I like to write engaging stories that will entertain, equip, and allow people to take action.
No, I think that's fantastic. And before we get to the next book about relationships, and I think I've told you this before, the book that affected me the most, as much as I love the energy bus and as much as I'm looking forward to relationship grit, I will tell you The Carpenter was the book that really affected me because, having been, somebody who grew up with very little and then went into the military and had this command and control kind of mentality, a book on caring and serving and loving is something as a leader, as I got into the material handling space and the supply chain space as an executive and somebody who had influence, that book really affected me. So I want to thank you for that personally.
Thank you. I appreciate that. People say The Carpenter is probably my best book, so I'll take it if people like that. It is a powerful story. It's a great story. I wrote it in like 3.5 weeks of inspiration and encouragement. So I'm glad it encouraged you and is encouraging others. It's about loving, serving, and caring. You want a great relationship, you got to love people, you got to serve them, you got to be committed to them, and you got to show that you care. And when you do that as a leader, your team will care about you. They'll care about the work you're doing. They'll care about your vision. You could have the greatest vision in the world and have a great mission statement, but if you don't engage your team and you don't know them, they will not follow you. How can you lead someone if you don't know them? How can you motivate someone if you don't know what motivates them? Once you get to know your team, engage your team, and serve your team and work with them, they'll be more engaged and they will follow you to the end of the earth to do something great together.
That's really great advice. And we'll be right back on Supply Chain Today with Ralph Henderson.
Thank you for joining us today. Ralph and our entire crew hope you enjoyed this session. If you would like to be a guest on Supply Chain Today, please visit our website at optimizesupplychains.com and fill out the contact form at the bottom of the page. Thanks again for spending this time with us.
Welcome back to Supply Chain Today with Ralph Henderson. Jon, your first book really helped me get a handle on servant leadership. What can we look forward to in your next book?
Relationship grit is about, in your relationships, how do you stick together, stay together, be connected, be committed to each other, show each other that you care. It's a story about my journey with my wife, our relationship, and how I was really miserable, how I was negative, how I was a jerk, how she almost left me. Thank God she didn't. She decided to stay, and she really should have left, but she decided to stay. Thank God.
Yeah, it's just you, by the way. The rest of us are wonderful husbands, just so you know.
I was not a great husband, not a great father, 2 young children. I was like
Yeah.
27 years old, 28. I was
Oh.
not mature enough.
Oh
I did
my.
not lead well. I just didn't handle the responsibility of it all. The stress and the fear beat me down. So I was being crushed by all of the outside forces, and I couldn't handle it from the inside. So the journey of this book is about our story, but it's how we stuck together, the lessons we learned along the way, how I changed as a husband. I really did change, and I became a better father. I became a better husband. I matured. And now 23 years later, the kind of relationship we have right now, and we just love sharing tips to help people stay together. Right now, there's a lot of people going through a tough time with COVID. We hear about divorces on the rise, and our goal is to help people stay together. Those who shouldn't end it, who shouldn't be apart, those who should really stick together and work it out. They just need some tools. They need some relationship grit, right? And so when you have grit, you stick it out together. We know individual grit is about perseverance and overcoming. Well, in relationship grit, you do that together. And on the other side of it, on the other side of the challenge, the adversity, the fighting, the issues you have to work through as a couple, on the other side of that is more intimacy, is a greater love, is a greater passion. And so as my wife says in the book, like she likes me a lot more now than she did.
Hmm.
And we really have a great loving relationship. And my wife's not afraid to tell women, have sex with your husbands. She tells people that in the book. Like, you haven't got to that part yet, but she says, have sex with your husbands. And she goes, why do you think John's so positive? So we get very personal in the book. So people are going to know the real story, and we put it out there. I'll be showing up events now, Ralph, and they're like, oh, hey, John. About you. So it's going to be a little
That is great.
awkward for me, I think, in a way, but it's also was important to be vulnerable to help couples. We've already literally had two couples decide to stay together and not get divorced because of reading the book early on. Like only 10 couples have read it, and 2 literally are not getting divorced now as a result of the book. And one guy is changed dramatically by it because he saw wow, if John could change and he could become this positive person who's doing this great work, and he was like this jerk, wow, I can change. So that's my hope, is that men will read it and say, how can I change to be a better husband? And women will read it to say, okay, how can I be a better wife? And how can we then be better together and have difficult conversations we need to have? So we share a lot of tips as well that worked for us and we hope work for others.
Yeah, what I loved about what you just said is it's not a book where the woman's telling the husband what to do and the husband's telling the woman what to do. It's how can I be better? What can I do? I really like that. And for those who are watching wondering, okay, supply chain connected here. Well, look, you don't have to go very far to know that if your home is unstable or things aren't going well in those relationships, work is probably suffering as a result of that. And so the reason I wanted John to talk to us about energy and about relationships is because with everything we have going on right now, those things are important, but they're important at home, because if we can get them right at home, then what happens is that translates to how well we are leaders and visionaries for work. And I believe we'll get through this more powerfully, and just more with more impact. And so, John, I really appreciate your insight on both of these. Obviously, I recommend all of your books, but the Energy Bus, the Carpenter, and then of course the Relationship Grit, I'm certainly looking forward to and would recommend those to anyone. And thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Ralph. I love what you said about how your home life affects your work life. We can't separate who we are, right? So it's so important to make sure that we are investing at home and at work. A lot of times we give our best at work and we come home, we have nothing left to give. But what I have found is you may think you have nothing left to give, but when you invest at home and you invest at work, you feel great about yourself. You feel great about your life, and you wind up getting more energy and have more success. And so you feel tired, but when you decide to invest, it's amazing how that starts to produce fruit at work and at home. You become more successful. When I made my family a priority, that's when my career took off. When I actually focused on the root, it was like I was in a way being rewarded for, you focus on what matters most and God will take care of the rest. Thanks so much, Ralph.
I appreciate you. Have a wonderful week, and I look forward to the next time we reconnect.